I was up inside a cloud one day until that cloud turned gray and started raining on everybody's parade. I'm talking hand grenades, blanketing the cities in flames. We couldn't even be saved by Wayne Weasley or Bruce. Couldn't stand.
I should probably talk about this right
I would rather take a step with a noose. Stick up way too many versions of the truth when everybody's full of doubts about the future because everyone is finding out that we're not bulletproof. Who'd have thunk it? These balloons are popping and we could have seen it coming. Should've looked at that instead of running. Now
let me tell you about Labcabincalifornia.
Something showcased so much nowadays is the trouble one can experience when growing up in the public eye. In the world of music, shedding an adolescent image can even be a liberating time to be in control of your image and experiment with more serious subject matter lyrically. It can also be a gamble for an artist. In the case of toning down comedy when it's a bold aspect of your group's dynamic and was part of why you were signed to your label to begin with, it can feel like a hard sell, in fact. However, when you're the Pharcyde circa 1994, following up their debut smash Bizarre Ride to the Pharcyde, with one of the most influential hip-hop producers of the 90s pulling the beats together and leaving his blueprint all over the finished product, it's actually a recipe for success that, oddly enough, wasn't quite that for the group at the time. But it's an album that's aged like fine wine. One that evolves the camaraderie among your friends into a better look within, while not losing sight of that chemistry. It merely adapts it into the moments of brevity, something to showcase a sense of unity amidst the darkness. Even if it's the last time you guys would all be together on a project in full. It's one of my favorite hip-hop albums of not only the 90s but of all time, and has inspired me in a few moments musically. I'm talking about the sophomore outing from the Pharcyde from 1995, Labcabincalifornia.
Sometimes growing up means growing apart, but I respect the hell out of the Pharcyde for really pushing themselves into a more serious trajectory on their sophomore outing, Labcabincalifornia, while not losing sight of a little bit of self-awareness and tongue-in-cheekness in their lyrics that I think continue, at least, they mature the identity seen in Bizarre Ride to the Pharcyde pretty well, in my opinion, obviously. I think that this record is incredible. It's one of my favorite hip-hop albums of all time. I think that even though after this the group kind of split apart and a handful of members went to their own things, I think that their chemistry still shines bright on here. These songs have unified messages across the board, and I think that all of them do a good job at both reflecting on the growth and fame that they had seen from that debut success, while also shifting some of the atmospheres and concept is explored from that into a more matured vibe on top of that. And they do get pretty dark on pockets of Labcab. I mean, there literally is a song in here called Devil Music that's about the feeling of losing part of yourself when becoming really famous, before going into a song that talks about the end of the world because it was 1995 and 1999 felt like the time when it was all gonna actually end.
It's 2 a.m., January 1st, year 2000. Power's out. It's pitch black. You need light. If you planned ahead, you'll have one of these. Just wind it up. You'll have light.
But they also find ways to adapt parts of their debut into just a more mature atmosphere or a more mature approach to it, like Splatatorium, which is still a weed song. It's just a little bit more of a mature weed song that gets a little more reflective and introspective. While they do have a track like Groupie Therapy on here that does talk about the sort of lifelessness seen in stuff like Sex on the Road when you're a young up-and-coming group. Also sort of adapts what parts of like a track like Passing Me By were exploring on a track like She Said. A track with an incredible beat by Slim Kid. While Jay Dilla's soul is felt throughout a lot of this project because he did pull together beats on here, I like that the Slim Kid side and the other hands that helped pull together their debut aren't lost, and I think that on top of doing some really good penmanship on here, Slim Kid's production is great, and on She Said, that piano loop is fucking killer, man. But that song also exemplifies a really strong hook, really good melody work, which is an amazing part of this project. The vocal layering is just superb. Bullshit, Run and Drop, She Said, the aforementioned Devil Music in the end. There's hooks for days on this to help keep these concepts in a good, reined in scope. The guys really deliver some heat and some good bars across the board, and again, their chemistry feels palpable as ever. You know, to flip it back to She Said, I think that the storytelling that was prevalent on parts of Bizarre Ride is still shown in full display on here. Fat Lip's verse on She Said is incredible. Booty Brown's opening gambit in Why Be Like That, a song that talks about the group ending it all, is fucking great with its rhyme spinning and wordplay. The fact that they still commit to bits amidst the skits, like in Little D, which has an interview with this character Little D, or in The Madness That Is All Live that pivots incredibly into the beginning of Drop, is just chef's kiss. This album's pacing is immaculate. It evokes a vibe from start to finish, and it puts you in it pretty amicably. I mean, the album art kind of evokes the vibe, and the music accompanying that helps enhance it, you know? I like that in tandem with that, similarly to Bizarre Ride, the tracks that have these pockets of just one guy or a couple of dudes pulling together an idea, I think still comes across incredibly well. A Moment in Time's atmosphere is well solidified. It's like the progenitor for like the Adult Swim bump crowd, full stop. You know, Amani and Kamau really setting the album off into the sunset with The End just feels so well done. And I think it's because of what that track kind of represents as well for the future of the group. This album is just, it's one of those albums that I'm glad did get more popular the more that it's existed in the world, because it truly is much more than its singles. It does have hooks abound outside of them, while having some well-articulated serious subject matter explored. You know, this album at the time marked a pivot point for the group, because Fat Lip left the group after this album's release, and then after a subsequent release, then Slim Kid left the group to do his own thing. It was sort of a large last hurrah for what was the genesis of this group. And it's a shame, because I think that not only is the talent on full display, but you do see what broke the band up in the lyric sheet on here. You know, you get to see their frustrations on full display. It's just done so very well. And it amazes me that this thing wasn't immediately viewed as a classic, because it is so insanely good. It's an album that's inspired me at least a couple of times.
We're living in an age of ultras is tumultuous, and tainted with all the ridiculous bullshit that we go up against.
Beneath my eyelids, shit was hella vibrant. Tommy was the goat, no lion. Dragon to a tiger to a titan.
And it's an album that, again, sonically I feel like helped adapt the blueprint of pockets of hip-hop for the decade that would come. You know, I still think it's kind of a gem. You know, it's not remembered as fondly as some records from the 90s broadly, which is a damn shame. You know, when I was making Pocket Project, I had to tell people that, like, hey, listen to the original too. It's really, really good. I love the Pharcyde, you know? And this record became one of my favorites because its sonic blueprint is incredible. You know, for all the praise I have for the guys lyrically, the beats on here are also impeccable. You guys that listen to Pocket Project, you know Runnin's beat goes off. The wonky sounds in Drop hooked me in as well. The vibe cemented in Splatatorium. I already mentioned She Said's beat. The smooth backing vocals with the drums on Hey You are just sublime. The sharp snare on The Hustle just hits so firmly. I love the production of this project, but obviously it's because one of the greatest producers was a hand in it. You know, like I said, while I'm glad that you still get to see this sort of, you know, you get to see this melting pot in pockets, I like J Dilla, and his beats on here are incredible. It's worth your time if you want a West Coast hip-hop classic. Labcabincalifornia by the Pharcyde is definitely a place to go if you want to see some great lyricism over some of the best beats you'll ever hear in the genre, along with some incredible hook work that showcases these guys were a powerhouse of talent. I know I'm not the only person to sing its praises nowadays, but I still feel like more people need to perk their ears up to it. And with that, I'm going to close out my thoughts on Labcabincalifornia. Have you heard it? If not, listen to it and let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. If you did like this look back on a classic, give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerd content, consider subscribing. Thank you again so very much for watching. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.